This presentation is brought to you by Alpha Echo, specializing in security advice and enterprise-wide cyberworthiness. Telstra, we're always better together. Nui Tech People, created to build strong tech communities.
You get to come on an adventure with me. We are going to visit the distant past of some far-off future. The world we're in feels foreign and yet familiar at the same time. It's different to what you're used to, but somehow the same. You feel unsettled. Everything feels in flux. It feels like the world shifts around you on a whim. You get this sense that things beyond your wildest imagination could happen at any time, but you don't know quite what, and that unnerves you. All around you is a web of interconnected and interdependent systems. When things happen around you, they set off chain reactions, and these interdependent and interconnected systems have these second and third order effects that you struggle to map out. And then there's the fog. It's strange. Its presence means that you can't quite make out what's going on, almost to the point where you can't tell up from down, even when things are otherwise clear. You are likely to be eaten by a group. You are brave adventurers. Where have you found yourself? Well, you found yourself in Newcastle, of course. You have found yourself in the present day, the distant past of some far-off future. And you all seem to be some kind of technology innovator. Lucky you. Now, I could have said, it's 2024, the AI disruption has started. It's started with a personal computer, and now we've got the internet, and we've got AI, and everything's changing all the time, and there's all sorts of opportunities. But it's much more fun if we put ourselves in an adventure game. Let me wind back for a little bit and introduce myself. My name is Andrew. I am originally from Sydney. I moved out to Gloucester about 18 months ago. And I bought some land and took on a head of engineering job around the same time. And so I get to make this dad joke. I'm a leader in my field. I'm not going to bore you too much with my history, but I've spent the vast majority of my working life helping out tech startups or working for tech startups. In the last 10 years, I've really spent all of my time either leading tech in a company or helping tech leaders. And the model that I want to talk about today is something that I've gleaned from my experience and from that I've watched from others. I've seen that there are great ideas. There are so many great ideas, and there are so many great folks wanting to implement those great ideas. And often the hard part is not the ideas or the technology, it's bringing everyone together to implement them. And I found that this model helps folks who are trying to pull teams together, and it helps people who are parts of teams that are trying to come together and make their way in this shifting landscape. So, yes, it's an intriguing title. You should play RPGs at work. It's kind of an odd thing to say because I'm guessing there's some folks who came here, and I'm sorry if this is a bait and switch. I'm not necessarily going to stand here and advocate that you spend your precious working time playing Dungeons and Dragons in the office. Mind you, I think it's a perfectly legitimate idea, and I think it's a great piece of team building if you can muster it. It sounds like great fun. There are maybe others of you who are like, what is an RPG? I just sat down in this room and that's a fair enough question. The answer is role-playing games, and we'll explain role-playing games a little bit. But why? Okay, what are we talking about then if we're not talking about actually playing Dungeons and Dragons in your office? And one thing, it really comes down to one thing. I've been working in this industry for 19 years, and I have seen good people, even great people, at loggerheads, frustrated with one another. I've seen teams that are immensely capable grind to a halt. And I've seen those capable teams fail to achieve their goals and get swallowed up in the chaos of the tech sector. And this idea, or these ideas that I'm going to share with you, I think could have helped them. And I've seen them help teams, and I think they could help you too. And so we need to play role-playing games at work. A role-playing game is pretty simple. There are many role-playing games, but essentially the idea is each participant assumes the role of a character that interacts with the game's imaginary world. And I'm not suggesting that you play any other character than yourself at work. Let me be clear about that. You should be yourself at work. You should bring yourself to work. Although I do have a team lead on my team who sometimes says that they LARP as a developer. But what I want to put to you is that we can take the skills that one might learn from playing role-playing games, and they can help you do your best work. They can help you connect with the team that you're working with, and they can help you achieve your goals. So a role-playing game, there's many of them, but they kind of have 4 main parts, and we're going to go through them in the next 30-odd minutes. We've got characters. We've got parties, which are groups of characters. You've got quests, and you've got worlds. And so in an RPG, you play as your character. You join a party to accomplish a quest or quests in the context of an imaginary world. If you're playing RPGs at work, you are the character. Please, once again, don't play as anyone else. Be yourself. And your team is the party. Your goals, you have OKRs or something similar, right? That's the quest. And the context of your business and your industry is the world that you're in. And if you understand these things and you put them together, it makes work so much better. It makes it even fun. So let's get into your character. It's where we start. How do you understand yourself as a player character? Do you understand yourself as, I think sometimes the Agile movement has driven us towards understanding ourselves as generic roles, because everyone has kind of become fungible. So maybe you identify yourself as some kind of generic class, like a rogue, or a wizard, or a senior software engineer that knows some Ruby, some Python, and maybe React. Hey, look, it's me, generic software engineer. Or maybe a program manager who's Scrum qualified and can write some SQL if you really ask politely. Or an entrepreneur with an MBA and 2 exits, or any other number of other stereotypes. But a character in an RPG is not just their class. Their class, as a rogue or a wizard, can tell you some things about them, some things that they're good at, some things that they're not, but it doesn't tell you the depth and the richness of the character. And there's so much more, especially if you're playing a tabletop RPG like Dungeons & Dragons. Your player character has attributes. It has special skills, and it has a backstory. So understanding your character is actually hugely powerful in your workspace. We've grown the team in Covidence. We've doubled it in about the last year, in the last 2 years. And so I've conducted a lot of interviews, and one of the things that has stood out to me with candidates, one thing that makes me sit up and take notice, is someone who has real insight into who they are. If they have insight into their attributes, into their special skills, into their backstory and what that means for them, it really stands out in a candidate. But the process of gaining this understanding actually requires a fair bit of self-reflection, and I don't think we often give ourselves that. You don't just get a character sheet that tells you about yourself that you can kind of crib off of. You have to stop and you have to reflect. And that can be uncomfortable. Like, genuine self-reflection can be uncomfortable at times because you have to pause for a moment and you have to think about, yes, what you're good at, but also what you're not good at. You have to think about what you enjoy and what you don't, what your strengths and what your weaknesses are. And that could be a hard thing just to kind of monolithically deal with. And so we have some tools. You might not get a pre-written character sheet, but we have some tools that we can use to fill in some details about our player characters. And you're still going to have to do work. I'm sad to say, happy to say, it's really worthwhile work though. And these tools help us fill in some structure and give us some ways of developing this understanding. So let's start with your backstory. The backstory is one of the most valuable things this is what brings a tabletop role-playing game to life, a TTRPG, if you will. It's what brings these games to life. Is each player character comes with a backstory, and you mine that backstory as you enter this imaginary world. And you, as a player character in your workplace, have a backstory. And so there's this tremendous opportunity in mining your backstory, not just so that you understand yourself, but you can actually use it to draw out what are some of the attributes of my player character? What are some of the strengths? What are some of the weaknesses? What are some of the special skills? And I've done this a few times. I've done this for myself, but I've also facilitated this one-on-one with a couple of my reports to help develop career and growth plans. And doing it yourself is most definitely harder. It is a lot harder to drag yourself through this process, but it's so worthwhile. It tells you a lot really quickly. And if you're doing it by yourself, if you're not doing it having someone facilitate this with you, then I recommend what you do is you actually write it down. You write down the story, and it might just be for yourself. It might just be something that you have in a notebook or you have in a markdown document on your laptop. It doesn't really matter. But writing it down so you can come back and kind of parse through it and highlight bits is worthwhile. You might also choose to share it with someone who's close with you, whether it's someone you work with, someone you don't. They can probably kind of vibe with you on some of this and help you fill it out. And they can help you find themes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable. I'm going to share a little bit of my backstory, and maybe we can try and tease some themes out of it. This is obviously going to be tremendously abridged. Normally, these are 40-minute plus sessions where you kind of go through someone's backstory and ask them questions. But we'll get into that. But the way I approach it, and this whole kind of technique is very much cribbed from Radical Candor by Kim Scott. She takes an approach where she goes through and asks these questions of people to help develop career plans. It's also just really valuable to ask yourself. So I start at high school. I ask, what extracurricular activities did you choose? Why might you have chosen them? Did you like them? Did you play solo piano, or did you join the big band? Did you swim, or did you play netball? If you played netball, were you wing attack or were you goal defense? If you know, you know. Yeah, someone knows. What are the other pivotal choices, more serious, more material choices that you made in your life? What have you optimized for? What have you kind of been pointing towards? What do you value? What drove your choices? What did you experience along the way? What would you never want to do again? When have you felt most like you were winning? As you start to go through your backstory, so hopefully you're going to start seeing some threads. Okay. Let's do it for me. I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable. As I said, tremendously abridged. So for me, in high school, I simultaneously joined the big band, the orchestra, and the concert band at high school. And within a year, I pretty much flamed out on music. So I then, for the rest of my high school career, participated in none of them. I played volleyball and field hockey because they tended to reward commitment and throwing yourself at the game and chasing every ball as a way to compensate for a lack of technical skill. I dropped out of uni after dabbling in media and communications, and I worked through a bunch of startups and corporates, and I have thrived generally in the ambiguity and empty state that comes with an early stage startup, building version 0 of multiple products. I got fired from a technical community manager role because I couldn't authentically market an inferior product. Do you see any themes? Is there anything worth pulling out of there that might tell you something about my backstory? Maybe some things that you might notice is I thrive in ambiguity. I love that space. I need to believe in what I'm doing. Otherwise, I get fired, it turns out. I can overcommit. And I'm willing to throw myself into things that I'm not technically qualified for. Just that little bit of like, I'm more than these 4 things, but they're little bits that you can pull out from a story, and you can work out what might that lead me towards. You start to understand yourself as a character, as a player character. If you are interested in this kind of process, I recommend highly the book Radical Candor. It's not about this process, but there is a great section in the middle of it where Kim describes this whole process. So the other thing that you can do if you're looking to understand your player character, your attributes and your special abilities, there's plenty of formal tools that will help you as well. I have a mixed relationship with these tools. I describe them as corporate horoscopes. Because, you know the ones, Myers-Briggs type indicator, MBTI, disc profile, there's learning agilities, like there's a whole list of them. And some are more scientifically based than others. Some are free, some are paid. But what they all do is give us a chance, once again, and a framework to consider our tendencies and our strengths and our weaknesses and things that get us going and things that shut us down. What I recommend, though, if you do engage in one of those tools, is hold it lightly. They are only slightly more reliable than your star sign, but you can use them to have a conversation with someone else or with yourself about your tendencies, your skills, your preferences. And so you can take, the summary output of one of these things, and you can take it like you would take a description of a star sign and work out what resonates. You don't have to take the whole thing and make it your entire personality. What a Virgo thing of me to say. But you're not by yourself. You're in a party. So even if you're a freelancer, even if you're, in theory, a sole trader working on your own, you're not working entirely by yourself. You're working with other people, and guess what? Those other people, it turns out, I have had to discover the hard way sometimes, they not only have attributes, special skills, and backstory, but those attributes, special skills, and backstory are completely different to yours. So it's worthwhile learning them. Once you understand your player character, it's time to get to know your party, because it is the interactions between these attributes, special skills, and backstories that are going to make or break us. This is the tricky bit, though. For someone to really let you in and let you understand their player character, their strengths, their weaknesses, their backstory, the whole shebang is a really vulnerable thing. And it doesn't come easily because we need to build trust. Now, I shared some of my story with you. I did not share all of my story with you. So what we can do as we start to learn about our party, because once we understand our party, we can do some really fun things, is you can start really what seems trivial and surface level, but can also still give you insight. And you can work towards those more impactful, more kind of maybe scary and more vulnerable things. And you can think about whether you do it on one-on-one or as a group. Maybe it's a chance for a coffee moment, like we talked about this afternoon. I find one of the best places to start, and this you learn so much about, like this, if there's one tool, it's better than MBTI to understand about someone, it's better than the DISC profile. You will learn the most from this one question: which Mario Kart character are you? Which one do you choose? You learn infinite amounts and then why do you choose that character? You learn so much about someone, and it's still light and fun and not too scary, but you learn a lot about someone. Now, maybe I'm showing my age with this one. Maybe we should go for something a little bit more modern. I find it fascinating, even in our family, just seeing which character different people gravitate towards. You learn a lot. So you can still ask serious questions in a fun way. And I want to show you what I mean by that, because this is something that the kind of genesis of this talk and this kind of thought process was something that I repurposed when I started my it's not new anymore, it's 2 and a bit years ago, when I started at Covidence, where I'm head of engineering now. I want to show you something, because originally we had this opportunity to get all of the team together, all of my new team. So I had 8 engineers reporting to me at the time, and we had a chance to get them all in the same room. We're distributed across from Auckland to Adelaide, so it was an exciting thing. And we're like, how do we make the most of this 2 hours that we had in the program with the engineering team? How do we kind of help them come together? How do I get to know them really quickly? How do I get to know their player characters? Because honestly, as a manager, the most important thing I can do is understand the people who are working with me and working for me. So I took an experience that was originally built at Microsoft as an event experience. It was called Startup Adventurer. And Aaron here helped me open source the code because it showed off a great technology at the time that we were looking to show off. But I saw the potential of this little experience, and I wanted to give a chance for my new team to see themselves as adventurers and adventuring together and understand each other a bit better. So I got hacking, and this is what happened. I promised a live demo, so let's see if we can. The demo gods are kind. So this is the experience. It's no longer Startup Adventure, it is now Covidence Quest. And we get a chance to start our adventure. And so we can, now you're seeing where some of this stuff came from. We can create are we going to create me again? When I originally built the prototype, my beard was more like this, but I think I'm more this beard now. We'll put a collared shirt on. Are we going to be? I don't know. We're going to wear a hoodie today. Always jeans, some cons, a coffee, and a laptop. Throw a bag over the shoulder. So I've brought myself into this world, and now the fun part starts. I get to give myself some attributes. Now the attributes that we've got here are from Sci Partners. They have an idea called superpowers. And so there's proper descriptions for these, but I think mine are, let's go. I love some experimentation. I like some problem solving, systems thinking, and we'll go vision. Now I get to give my character some points for those. This is actually the worst part of the user experience, is having to mash the button. How many points? I only have 4 points, 6 points left. Okay, that'll do. And so I create my card. And so this allowed us to have a discussion about, hey, what are our superpowers? You could just as well be talking about what's my Myers-Briggs type? What is my disc type? But it gave us a chance to talk about these things. So we had some people who were like, I'm a gap finder. I see when there's something missing, and I will always zone in on that. And I know that can irritate people. Or for me, I'm an experimenter, so I always like to be doing the new thing. And so kind of getting the old thing over the line is not really my happy place. But we get to have these conversations in a way which is framed that's not about value judgments about a person. It's about, hey, this is what I'm really good at, and these are some of the downsides of that thing that I'm really good at. And it's in this just creating your character first just helps let the guard down. This is actually still open sourced. I probably need to take the superpowers out because that is a licensed framework, but you can throw whatever in there, and it's just a React app. It's not a super complex thing, but it's a really great way. I have grand visions for this. One of the pieces of, we do quarterly reviews, and one of the pieces of kind of 360 feedback I got recently was, when is Covidence Quest coming back? Like, cool, this is kind of resounded with the team. And so there's an opportunity to make things more fun. You don't have to do this, you can find whatever way, but helping people kind of ease into it brings that barrier to entry down. Like I'd been with this team for 2 weeks and we had some really real conversations about who we all are and how that fits together. And now I can go back to my slides. Nice. So helping, so we have our party members and we learn that people are different to us. They have different superpowers in this case, or they have a different, the ENTJs learn how different the INFPs are to them. It's fascinating when people actually look at those descriptions and go, oh, yeah, that's why I don't get on with you. And suddenly when we do this, we actually start to identify the sources of conflict, because the problem is, despite this recognition that, this is a different person to me, I understand that, we still often operate in this idea that this person should think like I do. They should have the same background that I do. They should have the same experiences, and they should know that this is the right way to go. But they have a different perspective, and so they see it this way. And so a lot of the conflict that I've seen in teams is just two people with different superpowers, and often competing or conflicting superpowers or attributes, not recognizing what the other person is doing or why, or what's driving them, or what their backstory is. So an example might be someone whose superpower is provocation, asking hard questions and really needling to try and get the best outcomes. And that person might be rubbing up against another person in a meeting whose superpower is peacemaking, trying to bring everyone together and make everyone feel good about what's happening. And if you resonate with either of those ideas, you probably made a little bit of a value judgment. It's like, yeah, the peacemaker's right. It's not this is not the time for provocation. This is about peacemaking. And that may be, to a certain extent, true, but it's about recognizing that both of these things can live in tension, and that tension is actually the most powerful thing that we can have as a team. Because once we get past the value judgments about whether peacemaking is better than provocation, and we realize that both of them are tools that we have on our team, we get to think about combinations. How might we put the peacemaker and the provoker together in such a way that we get the best outcome? How might I, on recognizing that I'm probably more of a provoker than a peacemaker, if I'm honest, how might I realize that I have an effect on this other person because of the way that I interact? Could I modulate the way I do things? Or could we have a mutual understanding that the ways that we operate are different, but both beneficial, and that we might be able to even at least have language with which we can describe what's going on and what I'm doing and what I'm trying to do and what you're doing and what you're trying to do. And so by understanding who you are individually as a player character and your teammate is as a player character, gives you this rich ability to build combinations, to stack abilities. But all of this requires trust. Fundamentally, if I don't trust that someone else is doing their best or has the best interests of the company or the party at heart, then that dynamic of combination of complementary ideas generally doesn't work. So you have to trust that even though someone is different and is acting in a way that you wouldn't, that they're still heading in the same direction. And that brings us to our quest. You can't hold a diverse group of people with different attributes, different backstories, different special skills together without a common goal. Otherwise, you're just trying to bring these people in. Unless there is a binding purpose, a binding something, I think about if the classic party that I think about with a classic quest would be the Fellowship of the Ring. You have such an odd ragtag bunch of people. You have, if we're talking about complementary and potentially conflicting archetypes, you have a dwarf and an elf. Very different and in conflict initially. and then finding combination. But they come together and they succeed in that because they find a common goal. And so the importance of a quest and having a common quest and being aligned on that quest is that you're pulling for the same thing. One of the other significant things that I see in teams is people who are doing the same task. There are two different problems that you can see. You can see people who are doing different things to achieve the same goal. And that can be a certain kind of conflict, but you can kind of manage that. Actually, the worst thing is people who are doing the same thing for different reasons, because that tends to tear things apart. And this is what you see it in the Lord of the Rings and the Fellowship of the Ring as well. You need to be making sure that you're doing this, you are on the same quest. That's why, as a leader, reinforcing what the quest is. I spent here's a little bit more of my backstory. I spent a bit of my youth in a Pentecostal youth group. And one of the things I learned, and this is my leadership tip, one of the things I learned was, you'd sing a song and you'd sing the chorus over and over and over again. And one thing I learned was, once you are bored of the chorus, and once you think everyone else is bored of the chorus, you sing it one more time just to make sure everyone got the point. And the same thing is true of a leader. If you're trying to get a point across, if you're trying to do visioning, if you're trying to express a strategy, and I'm sorry, Jaden, you're going to get used to hearing about our strategy a lot. This is the first time I've given a talk with one of my reports in the room, which is fun. We're going to keep on harping on the strategy because we want everyone to get it. And we're going to keep on saying it until we're bored of it, and then we're going to say it one more time, just to be sure. And this is really important with our quest. We need to make sure that everyone is bought in and everyone is crystal clear on what our quest is, because that enables some really cool things. This wonderful cartoon, I love how management is depicted in this cartoon. The classic Dilbert, pointy head boss, is a matrix of, you can't see, it's being clipped off at the bottom. That says autonomy, which is actually the important bit. Because we want people to be aligned, but also to have autonomy. If we're really clear about what we need to do, and we can empower people, we get the best results. Because when you have low alignment and low autonomy, you have a bunch of people who have no idea what to do and are going to head in different directions. And they're unhappy, besides. If you have high alignment and low autonomy, everyone heads in the same direction. They probably don't head in the best way, and they're probably not happy. If you have high autonomy and low alignment, everyone's kind of happy about what they're doing, but they're not really pulling in the same direction. You don't get the outcomes you want, and things probably get missed. High alignment, high autonomy, that's where we want to be, but it requires us to be aligned on what our quest is. Because understanding your quest means that you can deploy the right people for the right parts of the quest. So there are stages of a quest. And I'm going to borrow at this point from Patrick Lencioni, and he has this book called 6 Kinds of Working Genius. It is a good book. It is not his best book, but it is a good book nonetheless. And he describes 3 stages of a project. He describes ideation, activation, and implementation. And inside that process, there are different skills and there are different archetypes which you bring to bear within different parts of that project. And in our quest, whether it is building a software product, whether it is maintaining a system, whether it is marketing something, there are different stages and different parts, and different people, different members of your party have different special skills which they can bring to bear. There are people like me who love experimenting and who are great at the ideation stage of a project. But in the last 10% stage, I'm still coming up with ideas sometimes. So that is not always a helpful place for me to be. That is something I have had to learn about myself, and it's something I've had to learn about the quest and the stages of the quest. So you can deploy different people to different parts of your quest to achieve your goal. And this could be a task, it could be a project, it could be a product. You've got to understand, like the Dungeons and Dragons example is, you don't send your tank, your warrior, to pick the lock. You send the rogue. You don't ask your paladin to sneak in because he's got noisy armor. You work out what the right person is at different points in the task. I think one of the downfalls we've had in some of the ways that things like Scrum and other agile practices have kind of driven us towards, any card should be able to be picked up by any engineer. It's like, yes, but no. There is some degree of specialization which is useful so long as you share that knowledge and so long as you kind of have the right amount. You don't have siloed people. You don't have single points of failure. You can get people to do the things that they're really good at and you get a better outcome. The other thing that you need to be wary of with your quests is you need to beware side quests. Side quests are wonderful when you're maybe playing Skyrim, which is another example of a RPG which I entirely lost myself into about 2009, 2010. But you can go on side quests and you can do something which doesn't take you towards your actual goal, and it can distract you, it can distract your team. Your party often gets blown apart as you go on side quests because you've lost your alignment. There are sometimes good reasons for you to take a side quest, to do something that's not totally aligned with your ultimate goal. And those might be things like trying to upskill a person so that they can contribute to your larger quest. That's worthwhile. But you should be careful about it because your side quests can split your party into three, and your party becomes less valuable. You get less of those combinations that you really want in your party. And so finally, we come to the world that you're in. So you might remember the world that I described at the beginning of the talk. And what I tried to do was describe a world that was in American military parlance, which tells me that even bad people have good ideas, VUCA. That is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So volatile means that it's changing all the time and unpredictably. Things are in flux. I would use that to describe the tech world that we're in. Things are always changing, and you can't quite tell which way it's going to go. And that brings us to uncertainty. When things do change, it's hard to predict. Is it going up or is it going down? It's a complex landscape. There are multiple things that affect other things that have second and third and higher order effects that change the game. And then it's ambiguous. Even when you think you know what's going on, you probably don't know what's going on. And that is a landscape that I have found myself in most often in tech startups and in tech innovation. There is some argument that you could make that maybe in a corporate you're shielded from that, but I don't think that's true anymore. I think in larger organizations, they are increasingly being disrupted. And so you find yourself pretty much wherever you are in a VUCA context, which means that you need to deploy your party appropriately. It means that you need to be able to have a rapid sense, react response. You need people who are on the lookout for what is changing so that we can adapt to it quickly. And we need to be able to communicate effectively about it. When there's a new opportunity, we need to be able to send our experimenter out to work out how we can make the most of that opportunity. And at the same time, we need to be using those people who are great at grit and finishing to make sure we have the most robust position right now. So that requires you to build a model of your world. Some of the best tabletop RPGs are played literally on a tabletop, literally with a game board, with a model of the world. You need to understand what are the different factors, who are the players. You need to understand that in the context of your team and how they interact with that and how their quest fits with that. How do you deploy the unique attributes of each player character? How do you deploy yourself within that context? Sounds a lot like building a strategy to me. And that's the fun thing that we get to do. Because in the end, we get to play the game. Have fun. One of the great things about having these superpowers and having these cards and that kind of thing is you can have fun. Work should be serious, but it doesn't have to be solemn. There's a wide gulf between those ideas. You can have fun and still be serious. Find ways of injecting that fun into the game. Remember that you are playing a game together. So, I think you should play RPGs at work. You should understand your player character. You should understand your party. You should understand your quest and the world that happens inside. And you get to play the game and have fun at work. Thank you.